Hi, it's Anthony here. Some parts of today's conversation may be triggering for some people. If you need help, no matter where you are in the world, search LGBTI Helpline. And remember, it does get better.
There was always a sense that I was different.
And she kind of just reassured me with real life examples that that's not how it was.
It's taken a while to unpack it all because it's a weird thing that has to come out.
I wasn't 100% sure I was lesbian.
And one of my tits fell out in the bikini set. Families are a great thing, but I have one now with my husband.
Being gay because it was on TV when I was growing up.
Shouting 2, 4, 6, 8, gay is just as good as straight.
Precious queer youth are taken care of.
I've been mistaken for a man ever since age 20.
And yet back then also you had that freedom to express yourself in these places.
Wait, so like all of these people are LGBTQ?
You're listening to LGBTI Conversations with Anthony Doig. On today's show, our next guest was never told they were born intersexed, but never really fitted on the spectrum of male or female. They were told they'd never go to university. Through the powerful art of affirmations, they proved everyone wrong. Welcome to LGBTI Conversations, Gigi Raven Wilbur.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good, yourself? So you were born in 1955 in Houston, Texas. How was growing up during that time?
As a kid, homosexuality and bisexuality were very taboo and even against the law here.
So when in Texas did the law actually change? Because growing up and knowing that you were different, that must have been pretty unsettling.
Yeah, and basically it didn't change all at once. There's a Supreme Court decision that made anal sex legal throughout the entire country, but it was some gay Texans that took it up to the Supreme Court and with the sodomy laws. And then other laws were changed over time, like cross-dressing, a whole bunch of different laws. And so it was just a slow transition to where we are now.
And do you think where you are now in Texas, what's it like today?
In the big cities, it's pretty cool, but a lot of rural areas are very anti-GLBT.
Because there's a lot of talk in America with a lot of laws in a spectrum of the LGBTIQ plus community being rolled back or being tried to be overturned. Do you find that very unsettling?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it just really, I look at it as being really bad, the things that are happening, especially on the transsexual front. I have a partner, and then I have well, he started out as my submissive, but he lives with me. Well, he's actually non-binary, and he doesn't mind what pronouns he uses, but he is transitioning into being more non-binary by being on hormones. And so, you know, there's a lot of fear around that because you can't really hide once you start growing breasts and you look somewhat male. And so that could have a lot of repercussions if some of the laws are changed here in Texas.
Because you've grown up in Texas pretty well all your life by the sounds of it. So you're a true Texan.
Yeah, well, as a little kid, I lived in Berkeley, California, which was very progressive for about 4 years. Then we moved back to Texas, and it was like culture shock. It was like, I want to go back to Berkeley.
So why do you think the Texan state can come across, I suppose, as so anti-LGBT in a lot of their decisions they make when they're doing the laws?
Well, I know especially up in North Texas, the Bible Belt is really strong. And in parts of West Texas, too, a lot of the rural areas are really strongly influenced by Christianity. And I think that has a big role to play because a lot of religions look at sex, especially gay sex, as a sin. And even sex in general, you're not supposed to masturbate. You're not supposed to have sex out of being married. And one of the things I've said on my own podcast many times is that to take the gift of sexuality, the Creator created our bodies to be sexual bodies. And to say that's a sin is kind of a slap in the face of the Creator.
Yeah, that is so true. And well, I suppose when you look at religion full stop, most things are a sin, right?
Yeah. And so, well, my father was a minister, and early on I started questioning stuff, and they finally threw me out of the Sunday school class because I asked all the wrong questions. I said, in the Bible, it says when 2 or 3 are gathered together, but we don't do that. We have communion on Sunday, and it has to be done by a priest. And I said, why is that? And I questioned, why are we performing this kind of ritualized cannibalism each Sunday? Just doesn't make sense to me.
And one thing I know about religions, they do not like questions.
Especially the ones I was asking.
Way too out of their wheelhouse.
And they could never give me a good answer for any of those questions. They said, oh, it's just the way the Bible is.
So at the age of 23, well, you found out that you were a word called intersex. So you went for the first 23 years not really knowing where you kind of fit into the spectrum, I suppose. Tell us about that journey.
Well, basically, I took a human sexuality class in college. And when they got to the intersex conditions, I went down all the lists and I said, well, that's me, that's me, that's me. And I realized, oh, crap, they didn't ever tell me. And I've always been somewhat effeminate, and I always felt like I'm not really a real boy. And my thinking processes, even when because I'm ADHD and dyslexic, they did a lot of neuropsychological testing. And one of the things that came out in the neuropsychs over and over again was that I had a blend of both masculine and feminine thinking patterns. And so all these little things kind of added up to me, and I realized, oh, I'm not really a boy or a girl. I'm intersex.
That must have been a pretty big relief to realize that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it answered a lot of questions I had growing up, because even the little kids, the boys and down the block wouldn't let me in the all boys club. And so I didn't really fit in well with being a effeminate male.
So going back to your parents and saying, well, this is me, I'm intersexed, and being a religious family, how did they react with that?
Well, I never got that far. Just when I came out as bisexual, they disowned me. And we haven't talked in, 25 years now.
And there was no thought they may come around over time, or it was just a straight up no?
Well, I was always the black sheep in the family and kind of the scapegoat. And I always got help for everything. And part of that, I think, was due to being so ADHD, hyperactive. But I think part of it, too, I just didn't fit my parents or my siblings' kind of sense of what it was to be a male. And also with the bisexuality, I mean, I love to suck dick, I love to eat pussy, and I like them equally. And I think part of that is because I am intersex. I mean, I am attracted to both males and females because I'm both partly male, partly female.
And I suppose
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that totally makes a lot of sense. And the thing is, too, society loves to put everyone in a category, and in some ways it's very calming for the greater society to go, you're a male, you're a female. But when you start blending the two, people get really anxious and confused. And then they're like, well, we don't want anything to do with it. We don't understand it. And I suppose growing up in the era you grew up as well, there was probably very little wording for it too at that stage.
Yeah, and I think in the 50s, the common practice, or a lot of the practices in the medical community, was not even to tell the parents. They just took the infant into another room, did a few surgeries, and brought back a baby boy or a baby girl that they had created.
That's horrifying when you think about it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are you aware of how much of that still happens today? Or has it gotten better?
I think parents are more informed today, but there's still a big push to make a baby either male or female. Now, in some areas, doctors are not doing it. They're waiting until the infant grows to an age where they can make an informed decision. But I still question that. I say, why should I decide what sex to be? And intersex isn't on the list.
Because they're playing God, really, aren't they?
Yeah. And it's like, why do they not ask this of little baby girls or little baby boys? What sex do you want to be? It's like, why ask me alone, single me out as intersex, or single out all intersex, that, oh, you have to decide on what sex you want to be? It shouldn't even be a question. I was born to be what I am.
Yeah, and if you look at it from a religious point of view, God creates everyone as equals, and he does not make any mistakes in his creation. Therefore, intersex is part of his creation, the same as a male and female.
Yeah, and I kind of throw a worm in the whole classification system. I mean, think about the actual definition of what it is to be heterosexual, gay, bisexual, or transgender. And for the gay and bisexuality, it's defined that who you're attracted to. So if I'm attracted to males only, then I'm a homosexual. If I'm attracted to both males and females, then I'm bisexual. But how can I be attracted to the opposite sex if there isn't an opposite sex for me?
Yeah.
As an intersex, there is no opposite sex. And so you think about if I'm attracted to the opposite sex, then I'm heterosexual. If I'm attracted to the same sex, I'm gay. If I'm attracted to both, I'm bi. But there is no same sex or opposite sex, because there's such a wide range of intersex conditions. How can I ever know if someone's the exact same sex as I am?
So how do you go within the greater community? Is things getting much better, even within the LGBTIQ plus community? The older I get, the more I realize that everyone does it. Even if you're in a minority group and you're a minority, you still judge other people, which is a terrible fault of humans as a whole. How do you feel in the community today? Is it a lot more easier, or do you still face prejudice from within the community?
Oh, I still face a lot of prejudice, but it is getting a little better. But I've been very outspoken, and I think that's helped here in Houston in the gay community, because I'm kind of recognized now as legitimate. And I think part of the problem is that even for transsexuals, it's hard for people to identify or even get sense of understanding when you're not trans. And I think it's even more compounded when you're intersex. The people just can't really put a finger on it. Oh, you have both? No, I don't. Doctors remove part of mine.
So it still comes down to that whole thing, the fear of the unknown, so they don't know what to do with it.
Well, I think it's also that as a culture, we really don't have a very good understanding of what sex is. We think of it as binary, male and female, and they think of it as a body part, but sex goes much deeper. Sex is partly body, partly mind, partly spirit, partly energy. It's a very complex system that we are given as sexual creatures.
That's a great segue into what I wanted to speak about next is, so for the last 10 years or so, you've been practicing erotic affirmations. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, yeah. Basically, growing up dyslexic and ADHD in our school system, back in the time that I did, it wasn't understood back then. And so I got a lot of negative messaging from teachers, principals, the whole 9 yards. And by the time I got out of high school, my mind talk, are you familiar with mind talk?
No.
Mind talk is the stuff we tell ourselves. It's like we come upon some little problem in life, and our minds kind of go, well, I can do this, or, oh, I'll fail it. I'm not even going to attempt it. And so mind talk can be either positive or negative. And I had a lot of negative mind talk. And I had a friend tell me, well, question your mind talk. Where's it coming from? And is it true? Because I used to say, oh, if I can't go to college because I'm too dyslexic. And all this negative talk was holding me back in life. So I started questioning it. Is this true? And I said, no, I'm pretty intelligent. And I just have to approach learning in a different way than other people, with given the right amount of time and learning things multisensory through seeing, hearing, touching, getting my hands on it, then I can learn pretty much anything. And so I changed my mind talk. I turned it around and started turning them into daily affirmations. And so one of my mind talks was, I'm intelligent. If others can do it, learn it, I can learn it. It may take me longer. I might have to do it differently than they do, but I can learn it. And I started telling myself that in my mind talk each day. And so I started just by doing the affirmations. But then years later, after I studied more on human sexuality, I realized that when you get into that state of ecstasy, your brain changes. Instead of thinking about, oh, tomorrow or yesterday or rational thinking processes, we move into more of an intuitive mind process when we become sexually aroused. And so I started combining morning affirmations with my masturbation in the morning. And I'd bring myself really close to orgasm, and I put my affirmations on my phone and I'd hit play, and I'd continue stimulating myself sexually as I listened to the affirmations. And by doing it when I was in a more intuitive mind space, sunk in deeper. And I think it kind of paved the way to the subconscious. And I know this works because at one point I felt really awkward and got real long legs and long arms. And I realized, oh, I'm got a lot of negative body image mind talk. So instead of saying, oh, my arms are too long, I'd say my arms are elegant in their length. You have a gracefulness that's different. And I didn't realize this at the time, but once I started that affirmation, I took a gymnastics class and then a modern dance class. And all of a sudden I became more graceful in my movements. And I think part of it is the subconscious will try to make your mind talk true. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, so true. I totally believe in that. And is that something that you do religiously every day?
Oh, yes, every day, every morning. In fact, there's times when I have to miss it because of appointments or I get up and something comes up that I can't take the time. But most every day I do it. And I change my affirmations over time. I've been doing this since, probably the age of 25, 24, 25. And it really helped me overcome a lot of difficulties. I went to college even though they said, oh, you'll just fail at it. And this was from psychologists, parents, vocational guidance counselors, everybody. Well, I went to college and started making A's and B's primarily in most subjects. And I got my bachelor's degree in philosophy, and then I continued on and got my master's degree in social work. And I owe that just to the affirmations.
Wow. Powerful stuff.
When you're growing up as a little kid, kids impressionable, and having all the authority figures say, oh, don't even think about college, you'll just fail. It really kind of set the wrong message in my mind talk. And it was through questioning it and doing the affirmations and later doing the sexual affirmations that changes started really occurring. And I just took off.
So can you tell us a bit about your passion for BDSM, performance art?
Basically, part of my healing, because I had a mother that was psychologically abusive, and my father was physically abusive. He felt that spare the rod, spoil the child kind of mentality. He used to beat me a lot. And so part of what BDSM did for me was I was able to replay some of those past scenes through role play, but with empowerment. All of a sudden I had safe words. I didn't get safe words as a kid. And it empowered that inner child within and said, oh, you do have the power to stop this at any moment. You just have to safe word out. It's hard to put into words how much that healed me from the abuse I suffered as a kid.
So it's almost like going back to a situation and having the power to say, no, stop. You know, this might be my non-knowledge of the BDSM, but it's not such a sexual thing either, is it? Like you're saying that you learnt the power to say no and stop a situation, but that relates more back to your childhood. But when it's in a sexual play, that's different.
A lot of people don't like to mix sex with BDSM. I do, but for certain types of role play, I didn't. And the role play I was doing was role playing past experiences. But then other situations came up that BDSM became very healing in other aspects. And a lot of people think, oh, BDSM is about pain. Well, actually, it's not. It's about erotic intensity is the way I think of it. It's still a little painful, but it's a different kind of pain. It's like when I stub my toe, I don't like that. But if someone slaps my bottom really good and gets the juices going, then, oh yeah, I'll go for that. That kind of makes sense?
Well, yeah, so it's not just a sexual act. It can be both, really, can't it? Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. In fact, one of my favorite things now in BDSM is genital torture. And I like to combine it with genital pleasure, and it sends mixed signals to the brain that just takes you flying deep into subspace.
And you also wrote a book called The Dominance Handbook.
It's all about BDSM. It's all about how to really do it safely and with informed consent. And I have some forums that Dom and the sub can sit down and go through the questions. And then you know, okay, these are the things I'm open to. These are the things I may want to try out, or these are the things that are off limits. And that changes over time. There's a time when I wasn't into humiliation play, and later on I got into it. And, you know, there's a lot of paradoxes with BDSM. One of the paradoxes that I discovered was that when I got into some of the humiliation play, a lot of healing occurred, and all of a sudden I became more impassioned with myself, and I grew to love myself instead of tear myself down.
So it kind of seems like it all kind of works in together. There's a bit of healing there, but there's also the sexuality side as well. And then,
oh yeah,
depending on who you're playing with, everyone's in the same mindset, because obviously if someone just thinks they're having general fun and then you start pulling out whips and chains, things could probably go a little bit south, I should imagine.
Well, that's where the negotiations before the scene come in, and informed consent and saying, well, this is what I want to do in the scene. Or if you want to have surprise elements, just do the BDSM interest evaluation. And then you know the groups of things you can do safely and with consent, and the things you want to shy away from. And by having informed consent in that manner, all of a sudden, everybody's on the same page. It's like, well, I like the paddles, but I'm not so big on the floggers. They're kind of stingy. Paddles are more thuddy. And so by going through this interest evaluation, you figure out what types of toys are okay to use and what each person enjoys doing. And even with role play, you can create a wide range of different types of role play scenarios. And I think of it kind of like in theater. In theater, actors get up on the stage and they put on a performance. Well, they're taking something from the imagination and giving it a sense of reality on stage. And so that's what we're doing in BDSM role play. We're taking fantasies and even living situations and putting them up on stage, so to speak, and bringing a sense of reality to it.
So it doesn't sound nearly as scary as some people think when you explain it that way. Everyone knows what they're there for. Everyone knows what they're getting into, and everyone has their safe words or knows how far they want to go, and then you just have fun.
Yeah. And even in the evaluation, I go through, do you have any medical concerns or issues that I should know about before we play? And that way I know, okay, you've got a bad knee. I'm not going to ask you to kneel before me. I'll have you sit down on a comfy cushion and bow down, but not be on your knee because you had a knee problems. And so there's a lot to take into consideration before you even play a scene. And it's kind of an illusion because when you see people play, you're only seeing the presentation. You don't see what was the scripts and all the details that were run through before the scene occurred. And so the illusion is that, oh, there's this person being beaten like really hard, and it doesn't look like it's a consensual thing, but it truly is, if it's done right.
And I suppose we can probably blame the adult film industry for that, where they just cut into scenes and it's not realistic.
Oh, no. I mean, 50 Shades of Grey, there was no consent.
That's true.
And there's no negotiation. It was just, they went in and did it.
So you were saying earlier on that you live with your partner and also, well, there's three of you within the relationship.
Yeah.
So I know triples are a bigger thing these days than they used to be, for sure. How does that dynamic work?
Basically, my female partners always identified as bisexual, and well, all three of us are identified as bisexual. You know, to me, love is love. And it's like, I always question, why can't two good friends make love? Why does it have to be this within this confines of a marriage or a monogamous relationship? And I had a lot of issues with monogamy. I thought, well, if I'm bisexual, I like the male energy, I like the female energy. I just can't be monogamous. I want to be polyamorous and open. And both my partners feel the same way. And I even, for many years, I just quit running it, but I used to run Aphrodite's temple, a sex temple, at pagan gatherings and Burning Man events. And basically it was partly to provide sexual information and education and then offer time for people to play.
Wow. It's interesting how you explain it, because it's so true and it's so normal. But again, I think it comes down to that whole society not knowing what to do and shining away from it. And I think that's what's great about the LGBTIQ plus community, is that it's just being open-minded to the possibilities of anything.
And the whole concept of modern romance is really a misnomer, because it started, ideas around romantic relationships actually started in, I think it was Queen Elizabeth's court, and it started as a court game because nobles didn't have a choice in who they married. Marriages were prearranged, and they wanted to open things up, and they had very strict rules how they could do it. But a lot of times, especially in the noble class, you had to marry within your class. And marriage has really been more about the passing of wealth from father to son, not about romantic love. And it was also to preserve the class system. It wasn't about, oh, I love you, like today. That came about as a game, and that's where we get the words like courtship and suitors and a lot of the language that's combined with romantic love today. It started out as a court game.
Wow, that's fascinating. Now, something we like to ask all our guests, if you could go back and tell your younger self anything, what would it be?
I think just as a little kid and reaffirming that, hey, don't listen to these authority figures. You can do whatever you want to do.
Growing up in the era you've grown up in and facing the challenges that you've faced along your way, you are a fantastic example of an intersex person and how they should be, even though they get a few rough knocks in life. And also, thank you for everything you've done for our community, because without you elders, we wouldn't be here today. So thank you from everyone from the community for doing that. It's something that we should be very mindful of and appreciated of, and I know I am for sure. And thank you so much for coming on LGBTI Conversations today. I could talk to you all day, a billion more questions I could ask you, but thank you for coming on the show. If you love listening to LGBTI Conversations, make sure to follow. This will help other people find us much easier. And also, make sure that you never miss out on an episode. Thanks for listening to LGBTI Conversations with me, Anthony Doik.